Welcome. The podcast for this week is designed to present and discuss the preliminary elements of a qualitative research design. I want you to note that this is not, nor will represent a complete research design. Many of the elements are discussed briefly here or even left off for the sake of time, but we'll examine all those elements as the semester goes along, not to worry. To get a clear view of the elements, of the entire selection of elements, refer to the fidelity chart that we examined during the first week of class. Now, let's get started by discussing the goals of research. This slide represents a simple statement of the goals of research. This could apply equally to qualitative or quantitative research projects. The key words in the slide are systematic, investigate, valid, report, and to minimize mistakes. To be systematic is to be organized and working within a body of coherent ideas and principles. For example, research in OT should be organized around the problem that is documented in the professional literature and can be examined through a coherent structure such as a theoretical framework. One might assume a well-known theoretical framework such as MOHO or one that's emerging. Either way, this approach provides the lens through which the study is organized. To investigate systematically is to examine a given topic in great detail. In qualitative research, this can be done via observation, document searches, and in direct or indirect interviews. Importantly, a deep level of detail is critical. Such deep investigation will lead to thick and rich data, which is a goal of qualitative research. Reporting valid results is also a goal of qualitative research. To be valid, data must be trustworthy. How much trust you have in your data? To achieve trustworthiness, we will engage in several steps usually described as a form of triangulation. Minimizing mistakes is difficult. Almost all research can be critically examined, revealing some types of compromise that have been made in order to accomplish a research project. These types of assumptions and compromises are almost always due to inadequate time and resources. It can be very difficult and expensive to interview informants who might live a considerable distance from the researcher. However, this problem is getting easier with today's technology, such as Skype or long-distance interviews can be accomplished very inexpensively. The starting point for any study comes from inside your head. What are your ideas? What have you observed? What are you curious about? How are these ideas linked together? Your ideas are the source for potential research endeavors. They can also suggest a logic and reasoning orientation, such as we discussed previously. For example, you might be curious about why a young person from a wealthy family is caught burglarizing the house next door. Have you previously observed such a phenomenon? What makes you curious about such events? Can it be because the young person is bored, suffering from an addiction of drugs or alcohol, for example? Are these ideas linked, and if so, how? The way to find out is to read the professional literature. What are the research precedents on this topic? How can theories of OT practice be linked to these ideas? It all starts in your head and heart and leads you up to the professional literature. However, it is the professional literature that guides you as you make up your mind about how to construct a meaningful qualitative research study. As you are immersed in the literature with regards to your topic, you will also be seeking an appropriate theoretical framework to guide your study. In the case of OT, some of the existing and familiar practice theories can be used. The difficulty resides in finding an appropriate theory and matching it to elements of your problem. For example, volition and motivation are an inherent element of the MOHO theory. Thinking of our example from the previous slide, why is an affluent young person motivated to break and enter a neighboring's home? Notice that in our proposed problem is based on our desire to learn more about why a person is motivated to commit a criminal act. And MOHO is theoretically based on aspects of volition, so this could be a possible match between the theory and the problem. The mating and nature of your selected problem as an element of a potential theory is a key decision because it establishes an entire framework that will guide the development and the rest of the study. Now you're probably beginning to get a handle on the problem that will become the focal point of your study. So now you can begin to ask yourself, what do we really know about this problem? Maybe more importantly, what do we not know about this problem? If you can identify a hole in the existing research, this is an ideal place to drive your stake. This positions you in a place where you can make a contribution to the existing body of knowledge. Ask yourself, why do we need to find out more about this problem? What are the potential impacts of the resolution of the problem? What can we potentially contribute to the current understanding and supporting of OT theories? How can resolution of such a problem add to accepted OT practice? These are important questions to keep in mind as you decide your study. They will also be bottom-line questions when you are eventually defending your thesis, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. Now we're beginning the process of developing research questions. Of course, these questions will be developed from your knowledge of the previous research that's published in the professional literature. When you think about your emerging topic, ask yourself, how can this topic be narrowed down? The thought about research is knowing more and more about less and less. Remember that you cannot solve an entire problem in one research problem. It's just too complex. So be satisfied with working on a small corner of the problem. As you read the professional material, you will probably notice that topics are frequently narrowed down by characteristics of those impacted. For example, does the literature address those with a specific disabling condition? Can the topic be narrowed down by looking at the problem through a sociological lens such as race, class, gender, age, or socioeconomic status? As you begin your examination of the topic, ask yourself, what is it you really want to know? How can these questions be broken down even further? And can these questions actually be answered? Is this study practical given the limited time and resources available? For illustration, here is a sample research topic: alcohol consumption among women in college. If we were to qualitatively address this problem, we would need to consult the literature on a variety of topics to establish the nature and scope of the problem. Assuming that we find credible evidence that college women consume alcohol, we are left to wonder if the drinking is excessive, and is that the nature of the problem? What specifically is the problem with alcohol consumption among college women? We might query the literature with regards to specific groups that might be affected by alcohol consumption. For example, are there particular age groups more likely to be negatively impacted? What about race, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status? Next, how does the literature define alcohol consumption? Is that one drink? Is it two? Where does such consumption usually occur? Is it on campus, in dorms rooms, or in sorority houses? Are these typical patterns for alcoholic consumption? These are all the types of questions that go towards identifying the exact nature of a problem to be researched, and is the foundation for the beginning of our research questions. Spent hours and hours with the professional literature, we will be able to refine the problem and its associated theoretical framework to generate an associated research question. To get to this point, we have explored the patterns of alcohol consumption on campus. Then we may have found documentation that undergraduate lesbians less than 21 years old probably feel extraordinary social pressures that could result in alcohol consumption at more than usual rates. So we might want to frame a research question that would allow us to interview lesbians for the purpose of ascertaining their experiences with alcohol as an undergraduate. This approach would imply a phenomenological methodology and associated assumptions. Such a research framework would begin with interviews to gain insight into the normative drinking patterns among undergraduate lesbians. What avoidance rituals are employed? How do they define alcoholism? What are the appropriate drinking practices among the population of the undergraduate lesbians? What are their lives like? Other questions have emerged from our technical review of the literature on this topic. After all the planning and the time in the library are online with the literature, we can now get down to the specifics of designing a research study. For the purposes of time, we're going to list them here and add those details to specific discussions throughout the rest of the semester. The most important decision to be made is the methodology that is appropriate to the research question and to the problem that we've carved out of the professional literature. In the case of our example on alcohol consumptions, we are pushed by the literature to conduct our inquiry among undergraduate lesbians who inappropriately consume alcohol in sorority houses. We also phrased our research question with regard to the lived experiences of these individuals. This strongly pushes us towards the methodology of phenomenology. We will study this methodology in detail at several points during the semester. For today's purpose, we are going to simply define phenomenology as how people experience and draw meaning from their world. I have chosen this from Pitney and Parker, the 2009 edition, page 222. With that decision in mind, we will consider the more difficult problem determining who these participants are. In our example research question, the population is well specified, but we are still faced with the problem of finding them and getting them to agree to participate. Then we will grapple with the types and logistics of collecting the data. Next, we are concerned with the analysis of that data. These are the major parts of our research design. But before we finish, it's important to think about the possible methodological flaws that exist in our design. Should we have chosen a different methodological approach? Is our approach consistent with the nature of the problem? Are there holes in our proposed data collection process? How solid is our data analysis procedures? Finally, we're concerned with practical considerations. How much will the study cost in dollars and lost opportunity cost? How is it going to be staffed? Can we afford such staffing? Should we pay our informants? These are examples of hundreds of decisions we'll have to make along the way in a well-designed qualitative study. Now that we've discussed some of the preliminary elements of a qualitative research project, we will wrap up this podcast. As the weeks of the semester progress, we will continue to discuss these and other important aspects of qualitative research.